A rustling breeze whispered through the quiet trees last night, carrying with it an unsettling sense of foreboding. As an investigator with a penchant for the unknown, I had faced countless eerie scenarios. But this forest held an inexplicable, almost palpable malevolence. The stories I had heard about it were enough to make even the most seasoned skeptic shiver. My team and I arrived at the edge of the forest just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out and grab at our feet. The air grew colder, and the silence around us thickened, broken only by the occasional call of a distant owl. Our mission was to uncover the truth behind the rumors of a clandestine government facility hidden deep within these woods. Whispers of unethical experiments and the suffering of innocent lives had circulated for years, but no one had dared to investigate until now. The trail leading into the forest was overgrown, as if nature itself was trying to guard its secrets. We pushed through the dense foliage, each step echoing with the crunch of dead leaves and snapping twigs. The deeper we went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The trees seemed to close in around us, their gnarled branches twisting into grotesque shapes. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, though by whom or what I couldn't say. We pressed on, driven by a mix of curiosity and dread. After what felt like hours, we stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood a dilapidated building, its walls covered in ivy and its windows shattered. This was it, the rumored facility where countless lives had been ruined. The sight of it sent a chill down my spine. We approached cautiously, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The entrance door hung ajar, creaking on its rusty hinges. As we stepped inside, the air grew thick with the stench of decay and abandonment. Dust particles danced in our beams of light, adding to the eerie ambience. The interior was a labyrinth of narrow hallways and empty rooms, each one more unsettling than the last. Faded documents and broken equipment littered the floors, remnants of a time long forgotten. I could almost hear the faint echoes of the past, like whispers on the edge of my consciousness. We split up to cover more ground, our voices echoing through the desolate halls. I found myself drawn to a door at the end of a particularly dark corridor. As I approached, a sense of dread washed over me. My hand trembled as I turned the knob and pushed it open. Inside was a small room, dimly lit by the moonlight filtering through a cracked window. In the center stood an old rusted examination table, and scattered around were restraints and surgical tools. The sight was enough to make my stomach churn. It was then that I noticed the walls. They were covered in scratched, barely legible words messages from the past. I stepped closer to read them, my heart pounding in my chest. Each one told a story of pain, fear, and desperation. The realization of what had happened here hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind raced as I tried to piece together the fragmented stories. It was clear that the people who had been brought here had suffered unimaginable horrors. Their voices, though silenced, seemed to scream out from the walls, begging for justice. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see my colleague Lisa, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. She had found something, and from her expression I knew it was bad. We hurried back to the main corridor where the rest of the team was waiting. Lisa led us to another room, this one larger and filled with rows of metal beds. Each bed had restraints, and beside them, various monitoring devices. The sheer scale of the operation was staggering. This wasn't just a place of cruelty, it was a factory of torment. As we stood there, the silence was shattered by a faint, almost imperceptible sound, a whisper, like a breath of wind through the trees. We exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if we were hearing things or if something else was at play. Determined to get to the bottom of this, we pressed on, our nerves frayed, but our resolve unwavering. We discovered a series of underground tunnels leading away from the main building. The air grew colder as we descended, the walls damp and covered in moss. The tunnels seemed to stretch on forever, and the deeper we went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It was as if the very walls were closing in on us, suffocating us with the weight of the secrets they held. Finally, we emerged into a vast underground chamber. The sight that greeted us was both awe-inspiring and horrifying. Large metal tanks lined the walls, each one filled with a murky greenish liquid. Floating inside were what appeared to be human figures, their features distorted and unrecognizable. We approached cautiously, our footsteps echoing through the cavernous space. One of the tanks had a control panel beside it, and Lisa, ever the tech-savvy one, began to fiddle with it. With a hiss, the tank opened, and the liquid drained away, revealing the figure inside more clearly. What we saw defied explanation. The figure was human, but grotesquely mutated, its eyes vacant and skin marred with scars. It was a chilling testament to the horrors that had been inflicted upon these poor souls. As we stood there, horrified and transfixed, the whispering grew louder, more insistent. It was as if the forest itself was trying to communicate with us, to tell us something important. We had awakened something ancient and powerful, and it demanded to be heard. We quickly realized that we needed to leave, to get out before it was too late. But as we turned to go, the tunnels seemed to shift and change, as if the forest was trying to keep us there. Panic set in, and we raced through the labyrinthine passages, desperate to find our way out. Finally, we emerged into the open air, gasping for breath. The forest around us seemed to sigh, a collective exhalation of relief. We had survived, but we knew that the secrets we had uncovered would haunt us forever. Back at our base, we pored over the evidence we had collected. The documents, the recordings, the photographs, all painted a grim picture of the suffering that had taken place in that forsaken facility. We knew we had to tell the world, to expose the truth and seek justice for those who had suffered. As we prepared our report, the whispering returned, a constant reminder of the voices we had heard in the forest. They were counting on us, trusting us to bring their story to light. We couldn't let them down. Days turned into weeks as we compiled our findings, each new revelation more horrifying than the last. The government had gone to great lengths to cover up their actions, but we were determined to break through the silence. Our report was finally ready, and we released it to the public. The response was immediate and overwhelming. People were shocked, outraged, and horrified. The media swarmed us, and the story spread like wildfire. But with the exposure came danger. We received threats, warnings to back off and leave the past buried. But we couldn't. Those voices, those whispers, wouldn't let us. We had to see this through to the end. One night, as I sat alone in my office, the whispering grew louder, more urgent. I felt a presence, a cold hand on my shoulder. I turned, but no one was there. It was then that I realized we had become a part of their story, bound to it by the weight of their pain. We had uncovered the truth, but at what cost? The forest, the facility, the whispers, they were all a part of us now. We couldn't escape it, couldn't forget it. It had changed us, marked us in ways we couldn't fully understand. As the months passed, the story faded from the public eye, replaced by the next big scandal. But for us, it never ended. We were haunted by the memories, by the faces of those we couldn't save. Their whispers followed us, a constant reminder of the darkness we had uncovered. I often found myself drawn back to the forest, to the place where it all began. I would stand at the edge, listening to the rustling leaves and the faint whispers, wondering if we had done enough, if we had truly brought justice to those who had suffered. One night, as I stood there, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to form words, a message. I strained to hear, to understand. "Thank you," they seemed to say. "Thank you for hearing us." It was then that I realized we had made a difference. We had given a voice to the voiceless, brought light to the darkness. It wasn't enough to erase the pain, but it was something, and for that I was grateful. As I turned to leave, I felt a sense of peace, a weight lifted from my shoulders. The forest, once so menacing, now seemed almost serene. The whispers had quieted, their message delivered. I knew I would never forget the horrors we had uncovered, but I also knew that we had done the right thing. We had faced the darkness and brought it into the light. And in doing so, we had found a measure of redemption. The forest remained, a silent witness to the past, but it no longer held the same power over me. I had faced its secrets, heard its whispers, and come out the other side. It was a part of me now, a chapter in my story. As I walked away, the breeze rustled through the trees, a gentle, almost comforting sound. The forest had its secrets, its ghosts, but it also had its beauty, its quiet moments of peace. I would never forget the pain and suffering we had uncovered, but I would also never forget the strength and resilience of those who had endured it. Their whispers had been heard, their stories told. And as I stood at the edge of the forest, a stream gurgled softly in the moonlit glade. I knew that we had done something important. We had given a voice to the forgotten, and in doing so, we had found our own.